Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
So David Pakman, some of you may have heard by now, seems to have been caught up in some kind of weird dark money group that was trying to fund progressive content creators. So this was a project of, or a part of, a larger group that is called the 1630 Fund. And this new program, which is called Chorus, and the Chorus Creator Incubator Program, not weird sounding at all, have essentially been trying to create an organization aimed at funding so-called progressive influencers. And David Pakman is one of them. Seems like most of the rest of them are like TikTokers or people that would be viewed more as like influencers and not so much YouTube news guys. So David Pakman seems to be one of the few who's from a slightly older generation of progressive media. And then Brian Tyler Cohen is also named in this article as one of the founders. David Pakman has issued his response to these allegations. I'm going to share that with you. And just talk a little bit about how this works and use it as an opportunity to check in on some of the strategies of some of the left-wing progressive commentators that became popular in essentially the first Trump era, David Pakman being one of them. And you see a lot of different examples about how people are handling their financials and creating a system where you can deliver content to people consistently and you can deliver narratives that might be contrary to some of the narratives that the mainstream media wants to deliver. So this is a very interesting and evocative story. It's maybe not the biggest deal in the world. I definitely think it hurts David Pakman's credibility quite a bit. Only reason I say it's not that big of a deal really is because this is a recent project. So the interesting thing about this is that this information came out like right away. And this project pretty much had the wind taken out of it. So we'll see. They'll probably keep going. And the weirdest part about it seems to be that they wanted people to keep quiet about this. So let me play for you what Pakman had to say about this, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the details about how this works and what the implications are when it comes to left media.
Now, the most important thing to say is that the idea behind this group is exactly what I've been advocating for years. For years I've been saying the left needs to organize independent media in the way that the right has been doing. The left needs to fund independent creators the way that the right does. The right has won even arguably presidential elections because they're organized with regard to online and independent media. They're killing us. We've been so behind. And this kind of support for creators is exactly what I've been advocating for. Now, the article is riddled with inaccuracies, and they're not minor inaccuracies. First and foremost, this group has nothing to do with the DNC. People writing saying, the Democratic Party is telling people what to say. At its base, the group has nothing to do with the DNC, period. Number two, I do not get clearance for anything I say. I do not run interview questions by anyone at Chorus. I don't tell Chorus when I'm going to be doing an interview. Not a single segment I have done, not a single question I've ever asked a guest has anything to do with Chorus. They don't tell me what to talk about. They don't tell me who to interview. They don't tell me how to cover a story. There are no restrictions of any kind on my content. I've never covered a story because Chorus suggested I do it. I've never not covered a story because Chorus suggested I not do it. There is no content relationship of any kind. So what does Chorus do? They run technical trainings, how to produce content, how to make your operation more efficient. How do you take a small shop of 1, 2, or 3 people and put content out on multiple platforms the way I've been doing successfully for decades? They set up mentorship relationships between larger creators like me and small up-and-coming creators who are looking to do content, which is something I've said for years we need to be doing. They do advocacy trainings. They do media trainings. How do you deal with adversarial media, reporters with bad intentions who contact you? They do legal training, so we understand how is the right-wing machine potentially going to come after us? How do you organize your business to be protected? That's what they do. The article identifies my friend Brian Tyler Cohen as the co-founder of this group. And now he's being attacked as well, his motives being impugned. Brian worked on this as a volunteer. He has spent hundreds of hours for not a penny on this project, solely because he, like me, believes we need this type of organization on the left. They're killing us on the right. He doesn't need to be doing this for himself. He's trying to do this to build up left-wing content creators, as am I. And so the framing of Brian as some kind of villain in this entire thing, it's just farcical and pathetic. So the bottom line is, we need more of this on the left, not less.
All right, so Pakman says that this is a progressive organization. That is exactly what he has been advocating for in terms of a structure, a system of helping to fund and support content creators to essentially match the march of propaganda that happens on the right, that allows for not only a very effective spreading of that propaganda across culture, but also for people to make a living within that ecosystem, which only helps to spread it further and entwine it with our culture. And so while there is merit to that argument, there's so many holes in it. And one thing he does not do, he kind of pretends that he did here, but he doesn't really illustrate a lot about how he got involved in this company, what exactly it looks like behind the scenes, what these agreements are, and everything in the article is about the contracts. So what appears to have happened is that somebody, either who signed on to this contract or got it at some point but didn't sign it, passed it along to Wired and had access to some group chats and some communications between at least one of the groups that was sort of recruited by this organization. And so Wired had access not only to what the contracts look like, but what some of the correspondence between different creators who were considering these contracts and were talking to each other during the negotiations. So discussing some of the things that they agreed and disagreed with about this contract. And essentially it seems like they felt that they didn't really have much of a choice but accept the provisions that they can't talk about certain things and can't talk about the fact that they are affiliated with this organization. And in other words, that, they said it's a take it or leave it thing, and it didn't seem like they had much interest in putting up that much of a fight. So that's where some of the details come through about what exactly this contract looks like, as well as Wired being able to look at the documents themselves. It seems like Pakman is saying that whatever deal he had was different from that. Now, that could be a straightforward lie. What he doesn't address here is the organization's apparent request that he not say that he's taking money from them or affiliated with them. And that's the part where it's even if you feel that this is a legitimate vehicle of propping up left-wing content creators and that the people behind it had legitimate intentions, isn't it weird that you can't talk about it? Because you are supposed to disclose that sort of thing. And so if there's no disclosure, and it seems like, the way they had this organization and these agreements set up was specifically as a loophole to get around having to disclose that these are political donations for political purposes. So that should be weird to you. And he's trying to frame it I'm an independent content creator and this is what we need is to, have more of an infrastructure to fight what they're doing on the right. And look, he's right about that. But if your discernment is off to the point that you don't see what's fishy about this organization, with everything that's going on with Tenet Media, with, Russian oligarchs giving money to American political podcasters through weird, shady companies. And it's the same thing. They were just sure, I'll take this money. And so it seems like David Pakman, he knows Brian Tyler Cohen, who was apparently involved in the foundation of this program. So he felt comfortable taking the money from there. Now, look, As far as the substance of this, I mean, it's shady and salacious, and people are taking money, and you're not allowed to say it, and they're propping up content creators, and they're shills, and he says they're not affiliated with the DNC, but they are funded by this more long-standing organization that is in fact affiliated with the DNC and the just kind of general Democratic establishment. So the idea that there's no connection there is wrong. And on the merits, on the substance, what this amounts to is dark money being funneled into more liberal causes like abortion rights, like, vaccine information, and propping up of liberal candidates. What there isn't any reporting saying is that this was a company that did not want these creators to talk about Israel. And it's possible that in some cases it was directly stipulated that they not talk about, Israel critically or anything like that. As of right now, there's no confirmation of that. And there's speculation to that effect because of David Pakman being pretty pro-Israel. That's the main reason that he has lost a lot of credibility when it comes to progressivism, the left. And so when he says this is what the left needs to do, and they're propping up left-wing content creators, that's dishonest, because that's not really what this project is. I mean, they're the left of what's going on right now. They're like a more left-wing answer to Donald Trump. But it's also just corporatist, democratic sort of establishment narrative-driven stuff. And even if David Pakman did not agree that he wasn't going to say certain things, if the other people did, that means that the organization that he is praising as being exactly what we need on the left is facilitating that. And what that means is that even if David Pakman is a real truth teller and he doesn't believe in that sort of thing, this organization is still asking that of other people. And Brian Tyler Cohen has come out defending this organization, saying that they're not restricting what anybody says and that they're not affiliated with the DNC. They're not being funded by AIPAC or anything like that. He says 1630 is in fact their sponsor, but his only retort there is to say that Taylor Lorenz, who is the reporter that did this story, gets her salary through 1630, which is apparently not true. He says that they pay her LLC or whatever. She said that's a lie. So he's just slinging mud, trying to hit back hard, it seems. But the reality seems to be that somebody went to the press saying that they felt they could only sign up with this program if they agreed to say or not say certain things and to fall under the umbrella of the program. And so what that is manufactured consent, especially at the level where these people are selected for this type of program because they will not speak about the issue of Israel. And this is specifically what the book Manufactured Consent by Noam Chomsky is about, is the choices that individuals will make when they are brought up in a system that conditions them to understand implicitly what the greater system and the greater powers that be want out of them. And the people that are more willing to align what they do and say with that are the ones who are more likely to ascend to certain positions in society. And this is not some kind of grand conspiracy, it's more of a pattern of behavior, because the systems of power are such that they can organize retribution for people who challenge the structures of power that they've set up. And so people that don't challenge those structures of power are favored by that system at all levels, and then people within the system promote others like that. And so what the ultimate result of that is a sanitization of certain narratives where you have people in the media space who don't talk about certain things, not because they're told not to, but because they don't want to, because they don't want to rock the boat in that way. And so it's been pretty clear for a while that David Pakman, on specifically the issue of Israel, is not interested in saying anything controversial. He clearly has, Zionist beliefs. And from what I can tell, everybody that's named in this, including Olivia Juliana, who has been a vociferous defender of Biden, and then Kamala, and essentially everything the Democratic Party does. And he just stands out to me in this list because he goes a little bit further back with the content creation back to sort of a YouTube era. People like him, the Majority Reports, it was Sam Cedar, Secular Talk with Kyle Kalinske, and even TYT. They were the ones who were doing it throughout the first Trump administration and before that. So I think all of them had been established before that in some sense, and then gained a lot of momentum during that first Trump administration. And so I was watching all those guys, and it is interesting to see where their different careers have gone, because I think part of the reason these things come up is not because of nefarious activities, but because the structure of making money, particularly with this business model that people find themselves with, you got to find creative ways to monetize. People end up bending over backwards. I've said of TYT that I think a part of what has caused them to sort of fall apart over the past couple years is Cenk overextending himself, wanting to build this huge machine, and ultimately just not having the like infinite flow of capital that's necessary to maintain something like that. And so he is put in a position now where he is like doing business with weird people. He's now advertising for Vivek Ramaswamy on TYT, and they've removed Medicare for All as one of their like foundational planks over there at TYT. So that's a perfect example of their politics being affected by the business decisions that they have to make. And I'm not saying that, you know, their actual politics haven't eroded in the meantime. We all know that they're responsible for people like Dave Rubin, Jimmy Dore, whatever the model was over there, their model of vetting people and what it was that people were looking for in the media space, it seemed to have kind of hollow intentions. You look at what Anna Kasparian's doing now, she's just hollow, kind of shallow, self-focused. You know what I mean? Cenk is trying to make himself the center of every conversation constantly. And then, you know, Sam Cedar and the Majority Report, they're consistent, they hold strong. I've praised the fact that they have a very tight operation. You know, it's they run low cost, minimum capital, maximum reach. I think that should be the goal. When it comes to left-wing content creation, someone who's not necessarily trying to build like a big giant business with a ton of employees, but rather trying to build something effective and, you know, aligned with your values, I think you have to, you know, try to create as consistent of a product as you can for the lowest possible cost. And the people who have done that, another example being Kyle Kalinske, I think are the ones who are ahead in the current media space. They're producing a lot of content quickly. They have a lot of trust with their audience. They've built a ton of credibility over the years. And so, you know, when Kyle does things like go after Joe Rogan, he's able to make more of a dent than other content creators are, because he's built up some credibility, not just in the political space, but with Joe Rogan's audience by going on his platform and that sort of thing. And then, you know, I checked in on Jimmy Dore too, not that he's like really comparable with the rest of those guys, but, you know, he's making like, he seems to be like fully pro-Trump at this point. He's just making videos directly appealing to Trump won this and Trump did that. And so, you know, all of this is a matter of what you have to do to keep your business afloat. And then it wasn't that long ago that David Pakman on his platform was complaining that like he's not getting enough views, he needs more engagement, people need to give more or something like that. He used the phrase circling the drain to describe his own platform. He was feeling that he was, I don't know, being throttled by YouTube or something like that. You know, I think under conditions like that, whatever they may be, self-imposed or who knows what the hell Cenk is doing over there at TYT, you know, you end up in a position where you got to do stuff for money. And the people like Kyle Kalinske and the Majority Report that are able to have a little bit more control over what they say yes to in terms of advertising. Kyle Kalinske doesn't do advertising at all. He has an audience of people that crowdfund him. And the same is mostly true for the Majority Report. They advertise a little bit, but it's like very curated. And so in some cases, you might have to accept less money in order to build a model like that. But at the same time, the reward you get for that is the consistency on the other end, and the fact that you're building a vehicle that can really keep going and keep delivering. And that's what I've seen that makes these guys the most valuable over time, is like who stays the most consistent and who's still here. And, there's lots of different things that can drag these content creators down. It all just comes down to integrity. And I think it's less about, whether people are good or bad people, or whether they had good intentions when they started these projects. And I think it's more about the fact that if you're not smart about how you set your system up and what you're going to need in order to keep it going, you might put yourself in a position where someone can take advantage of you by being able to see what you need and offering you that. And that's exactly why right-wing media is as shallow and shameless as it is.